Acceptance of a plan. The cabinet mission plan did not clarify whether grouping was compulsory or voluntary. The Congress and League initially interpreted the mission plan in their own way and accepted its long-term plan. The League interpreted the groupings to be compulsory, with sections B and C developing into strong entities with the right to secede from the Union in the future. The Congress interpreted the groupings as optional and held that provinces need not join if they do not wish to. On 29 June 1946, the cabinet mission left India after failing to secure a consensus between the League and the Congress. Rejection of a plan. Congress wanted a province to not wait till the first elections to leave a group. It should have the option not to join it in the first. The proposed Constituent Assembly was criticized by the Congress for not including elected members from the princely states. The League wanted provinces to have the right to question the Union Constitution now, not wait for 10 years. The League accepted the mission plan to the extent Pakistan was implied in the compulsory grouping clause. Ultimately, neither the League nor the Congress agreed to the cabinet mission's proposal. Congress. On 10 July 1946, the Congress rejected the cabinet mission plan but decided to participate in the Constituent Assembly. Muslim League. On 29 July, the League Working Committee withdrew its acceptance of the long-term plan and called for direct action. This was a crucial juncture because, after this, partition became inevitable, with most of the Congress leaders agreeing to it, seeing it as tragic but unavoidable. Only Mahatma Gandhi and Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan of the NWFP continued to firmly oppose the idea of partition. Rejection of partition. The cabinet mission did not agree to the Muslim League's demand for a full-fledged Pakistan. They reasoned that if the principle of communal self-determination were to be granted to Muslims, it should also be extended to non-Muslims. This meant that the majority of non-Muslim populations in West Bengal, Eastern Punjab, and Assam proper would also have the right to determine their political status based on communal considerations. The mission's plan was intended to be a compromise. It aimed to satisfy the Congress by rejecting the Pakistan scheme while at the same time aiming to appease the Muslim League by creating an autonomous Muslim majority area in some proximity. UPSC 2002. The last opportunity to avoid the partition of India was lost with the rejection of which of the following? A. Cripps Mission. B. Rajgopalachari Formula. C. Cabinet Mission. D. Wavell Plan. Answer. C. Cabinet Mission. 28.7. Election to the Constituent Assembly, July 1946. The elections for the 296 seats of the Constituent Assembly assigned to the British Indian provinces were held in July 1946. As the Congress swept the general seats in the provincial elections, it won a majority of the seats in the Constituent Assembly. The Muslim League boycotted the Constituent Assembly, pressing its demand for Pakistan with a separate constitution. The Socialists also hesitated to join because they believed the Constituent Assembly was a creation of the British and, therefore, incapable of being truly autonomous. As a result, 82% of the members in the Constituent Assembly were also members of the Congress. 28.8. Summary. Wavell Plan and Simla Conference. With the end of the war, the government was anxious to have a coalition government representing both communities, which would tackle the political and economic instability expected to evolve on the termination of the war. In June 1945, the British government and the Viceroy, Lord Wavell, simultaneously announced a new offer, Wavell Plan, to work out an interim political agreement under which Indians would be responsible for running the country. Wavell convened the Simla Conference on 25 June 1945 to consider the proposals. Wavell proposed expanding the Viceroy's Executive Council to include balanced representation of all communities and equal representation of high-caste Hindus and Muslims. Indian National Army Trial, INA trial, between November 1945 and May 1946, around 10 court-martials were conducted. The first was the joint court-martial of Colonel Prem Sehgal, Colonel Gurbaksh Singh Dhillon, and Major General Shah Nawaz Khan, held in November 1945. all parties came out in support of INA soldiers and protested against the court-martials. This forced the government to release all three defendants. Royal Indian Navy, RIN, Mutiny. On 18 February 1946, the ratings of HMIS Talwar in Bombay harbour went on strike to protest against bad food and racial arrogance. The ratings appealed to the people and leaders for their assistance. However, despite their appeal, the leaders were absent, but many people came forward to help. The INC and the Muslim League condemned the mutiny, while the Communist Party of India was the only party that supported the rebellion. Scholars consider the RIN mutiny one of the final nails in the coffin of the British Empire. Although independence was already inevitable by this time, the mutiny is believed to have accelerated the transfer of power. Elections of 1945 to 46. 1945 to 46 elections showed that the Congress represented the large masses of the country while also making the League the leading party among Muslim voters. Cabinet Mission, March 1946. It recommended a united India comprising both British India and princely states. It also proposed a loose three-tier federation. The Congress and League initially interpreted the mission plan in their own way and accepted its long-term plan. However, later, they rejected the plan. 28.9. Timeline. End of chapter 29. Freedom with partition. 29.1. Direct Action Day, 16 August 1946. After the failure of the cabinet mission, Jinnah called for a Direct Action Day to press the League's demand for Pakistan. The new slogan, Lar Lenge Pakistan, we will fight and get Pakistan, was given. On the designated day, 16 August 1946, bloody riots broke out in Calcutta. The violence spread to rural Bengal, then to Bihar, and then across the country to the United Provinces and the Punjab. In some places, Muslims were the main sufferers. In other places, Hindus. To restore the communal harmony, Gandhi visited the Noakhali in November 1946. By March 1947, violence spread to many parts of northern India. The communal riots continued for a long period in northern India. This was because, 1. British officials did not know how to handle the situation. They were unwilling to take decisions and hesitant to intervene. 2. Many Indian civil servants in the affected provinces feared for their own lives and property. 3. The British were busy preparing to quit India. 4. The top leadership of the Indian parties, barring Mahatma Gandhi, were involved in negotiations regarding independence. 5. Indian soldiers and policemen came to act as Hindus, Muslims, or Sikhs. In many places, not only did policemen help their co-religionists, but they also attacked members of other communities. Inevitability of the partition in Bengal. After the communal disturbances in Calcutta and Noakhali, 1946, Hindus distrusted the chief minister, Muslim League. They demanded the partition of the province based on communal lines. By March 1947, and after the Rawalpindi riots, it became obvious that the Sikhs preferred partition of the Punjab. In March 1947, the Congress Working Committee voted to divide the Punjab into two houses, one with a Muslim majority and the other with a Hindu-Sikh majority, and it asked for the application of a similar principle to Bengal. 29.2. Interim Government, 2nd September 1946 to 15th August 1947. According to the Cabinet Mission Plan, the interim government would be formed from the Constituent Assembly. The Congress and the League rejected the Cabinet Mission Plan. However, Congress decided to participate in the Constituent Assembly. The British government was now placed in a dilemma whether to go ahead and form the interim government with the Congress or await League agreement to the plan. Finally, the interim government was formed on 2nd September 1946 by Congress members alone, with Nehru as de facto head. Jawaharlal Nehru was sworn in as Vice President of the Executive Council. The League demanded a separate Pakistan and did not join the interim government. Meanwhile, the League started direct action to press its demand. The Viceroy, Wavell, was convinced that the League's cooperation was necessary to stop the communal violence. He tried to get the League into the government, thinking they might become more moderate if they were involved in running the administration. Finally, on 26 October 1946, the League joined the interim government. However, it's important to note that the League joined the interim government without participating in the Constituent Assembly, abandoning its policy of direct action, relinquishing its demand for a separate Pakistan. New phase of conflict. The League's entry into the interim government did not end the conflict but opened another arena of struggle. In the interim government, the League followed the policy of non-cooperation, which made the administration difficult. The League joined the government because they believed that exclusive control over administration by the Congress was not in the League's interest. Their aim was to show that cooperation was not possible and to move closer to achieving their goal of Pakistan. Threat of breakdown. The Constituent Assembly met for the first time in New Delhi on 9 December 1946. The Muslim League decided to boycott and did not participate in the Constituent Assembly. Later, the League demanded that the Constituent Assembly be dissolved because it was unrepresentative. On 5 February 1947, the Congress members of the interim government sent a letter to Wavell demanding that the League members be asked to resign. However, the League remained in the interim government until 19 July 1947. 207 members were present in the inaugural session of the Constituent Assembly on 9 December 1946, which was presided by Dr. Satchidanand Sinha, the temporary chairman of the Assembly. Members of the interim government. The members of the interim government were members of the Viceroy's Executive Council. The Viceroy was the President, while Jawaharlal Nehru was the Vice President of the Council. Interim Government, 2nd September 1946 to 15th August 1947, Members' Portfolios. Lord Wavell, till February 1947, Lord Mountbatten, from February 1947. President of the Executive Council. Sir Claude Auchinleck, Commander-in-Chief. Indian National Congress. Jawaharlal Nehru, Vice President of the Executive Council, External Affairs and Commonwealth Relations. Vallabhbhai Patel, Home Affairs, Information and Broadcasting. Rajendra Prasad, Agriculture and Food. C. Rajgopalachari, Education and Arts. Baldev Singh, Defence. Dr. John Mathai, Industries and Supplies. Jagjeevan Ram, Labour. Asaf Ali, Railways and Communications. C. H. Bhabha, Work, Mines and Power. All India Muslim League. Liaquat Ali Khan, Finance. Ibrahim Ismail Chundrigar, Commerce. Ghaznanar Ali Khan, Health. Jogendra Nath Mandal, Law. Abdur Nishtar, Posts and Air. UPSC 2003, who headed the interim cabinet formed in the year 1946? A. Rajendra Prasad. B. Jawaharlal Nehru. C. Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. D. C. Rajgopalachari. Answer: B. Jawaharlal Nehru. 29.3. Merit Congress Session, 1946. In the Ramgarh session of 1940, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad was elected President of the Indian National Congress for the second time. The sessions were not held from 1941 to 1945, and Maulana Abul Kalam Azad continued to serve as President, making him the longest-serving President of the INC before independence. In 1923, at the age of 35, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad became the youngest person to serve as the President of the INC. The last session of the INC before India's independence was held in November 1946 at Victoria Park in Meerut. Acharya J. B. Kripalni presided over it. Kripalni was the president of the INC when India gained independence. He resigned from the presidentship soon after independence. Highlights. The Indian National Army, INA, functionaries participated in the session for the first time. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru hoisted a 9x 14-foot khadi tricolor flag with the image of a full charkha at the center. UPSC 2002. Who was the president of the Indian National Congress at the time of the partition of India? A. C. Rajgopalachari. B. J. B. Kripalni. C. Jawaharlal Nehru. D. Maulana Abul Kalam Azad. Answer. B. J. B. Kripalni. 29.4. Clement Attlee's announcement, February 1947. On 20th February 1947, the British Prime Minister, Clement Attlee, announced that the British would withdraw from India by 30th June 1948. Lord Mountbatten would replace Wavell as Viceroy. The power would be transferred to more than one central government if the Constituent Assembly was not fully representative, i.e., if Muslim-majority provinces did not join it. Why did the British set a date for their withdrawal? The British set a date of 30th June 1948 for their withdrawal because there was an irreversible decline of government authority in India, as Lord Wavell stated. It was also intended to push the INC and League into agreement on the main question and avert the constitutional crisis that threatened the country. To convince Indians that the British were sincere about granting independence. Response. The Congress received the statement enthusiastically and responded with a gesture of cooperation to the League. The League refused to join the Constituent Assembly and demanded it to be dissolved. Jinnah was convinced that sticking to his position would lead to achieving his goal for Pakistan. Significance: the British have finally announced the date of their return. It implied the partition of India if the Muslim-majority provinces did not join the Constituent Assembly. It did not provide any solution to the deadlock that existed over participation in the Constituent Assembly. 29.5. Arrival of Lord Mountbatten. Lord Mountbatten was the last Viceroy of British India. He was responsible for winding up the British Raj by 30th June 1948. Lord Mountbatten claimed that he introduced the time limit of 30th June 1948 into 20th February statement, but this is not true. Wavell originally proposed a fixed date. He advocated a complete British withdrawal from India by 31st March 1948. Attlee suggested a mid-1948 timeline, but Lord Mountbatten insisted on a specific date and selected 30th June 1948. When Viceroy Lord Mountbatten arrived in India in March 1947, the nation was engulfed in communal riots. The divide between Congress and the League widened. Jinnah remained firm in his demand for Pakistan, exacerbating tensions. Mountbatten tried to build an agreement between the political parties for the first 2 months after coming to India. He soon realized that he had limited options and partition was to be implemented. However, in reality, the Viceroy made no serious efforts to keep India united. Rather than making a genuine effort to maintain unity, he took an easier approach to win the favor of both sides so that two dominions would be allies of Britain in Commonwealth defense. Plan Balkan, Dickey Bird Plan, April 1947. In April 1947, Lord Mountbatten concluded that the Cabinet Mission Plan was no longer feasible and developed a new plan. The new plan is known as the Balkan Plan, as it suggested the decentralization of power to the provinces and proposed the division of Punjab and Bengal, with power being granted to the provinces and sub-provinces. Under this plan, individual provinces would be declared the independent successor states, and power would be transferred to them. These new provinces, independent provinces, and princely states would have the option to join India or Pakistan or remain separate. The plan also suggested giving Punjab and Bengal the choice to vote for the partition of their provinces. However, the plan was abandoned after the strong opposition of national leaders, particularly Jawaharlal Nehru. Balkanization involves dividing an area, country, or region into multiple smaller units. Mountbatten Plan, 3rd June Plan, 3rd June 1947. On 3rd June 1947, the Viceroy, Lord Mountbatten, proposed the Mountbatten Plan. Mountbatten Plan was to divide India but retain maximum unity. This was done by making concessions to both the Congress and the League. Punjab and Bengal would be divided so that the limited Pakistan that emerged would meet both the Congress and League's positions to some extent. The League's demand would be accommodated by creating Pakistan, but it would be made as small as possible to accommodate the Congress's stand on unity. Since Congress was making the bigger concession, i.e., giving up its ideal of a united India, all its other stands were to be upheld by the British. For example, Mountbatten supported the Congress stand that princely states must not be given the option of independence. Hyderabad should join India. Important provisions. British India would be divided into the Dominion of India and the Dominion of Pakistan with effect from 15 August 1947. The princely states were given the right to join either India or Pakistan. Princely states had no option to remain independent. To decide on the partition of Bengal and Punjab, their legislative assemblies were to divide themselves into two groups. One group would comprise the representatives of the Muslim majority districts, while the other would include those of the Hindu majority. These two groups would then cast their votes separately. If either of the groups voted in favor of partition, then the provinces would be partitioned. A plebiscite would be held in the Northwest Frontier Province and the Sylhet district of Assam to decide their fate. If partition were to take place, a boundary commission would be established. Two dominions and two constituent assemblies would be established. Partition of Bengal and Punjab. On 20th June, the Bengal Legislative Assembly met. In the separate voting, it was decided that West Bengal would go to India and its legislature would join the existing Constituent Assembly of India. East Bengal would go to Pakistan and its legislature would join the new Constituent Assembly of Pakistan. Similarly, the Punjab Legislative Assembly decided that West Punjab would go to Pakistan and East Punjab would go to India. The Congress and Muslim League ultimately approved the Mountbatten Plan. Early transfer of power. Lord Mountbatten was clearly directed by His Majesty's government to explore options of unity and division until October 1947, after which he was to advise the government on power transfer. However, Mountbatten expedited the process of power transfer and sought to effect an early transfer of power, 15 August 1947, based on dominion status to two successor states, India and Pakistan. Acceptance of the dominion status. The Congress accepted the dominion status because 1. To assume power and check the communal situation, the acceptance of dominion status was the only way of immediately assuming complete power and taking the communally explosive situation in hand. The British officials were not fully committed to preventing the communal situation from worsening. Sardar Patel summed up the situation in his statement to the Viceroy, "You won't govern yourself and won't let us govern." 2. Continuity in bureaucracy. It would allow British officials to stay temporarily, giving time for Indians to settle into their new roles of authority. Early transfer of power. The British advanced the withdrawal date to 15 August 1. To secure the Congress agreement to dominion status. 2. To avoid being responsible for the rapidly deteriorating communal situation in India. Hasty transfer and consequences. A peaceful transfer of power and division of the country could take at least a few years. The early transfer of power to 15 August, giving just 72 days, 3rd June to 15 August 1947, proved a total failure. Moreover, the delay in announcing the Boundary Commission Award aggravated the tragedy of partition. The Boundary Commission Award was ready on 12 August 1947. However, Mountbatten decided to delay its announcement until after India's Independence Day so that the British would not be responsible for its implementation. This created confusion for ordinary citizens and officials. The flags of both India and Pakistan were flown in the region, and people believed they were on the correct side. Later, they discovered themselves on the opposite side of the newly drawn border. 29.6 Boundary Commission. Mountbatten Plan of 3rd June proposed a boundary commission if the partition was to be effected. The Bengal and Punjab assemblies decided in favour of partition on June 20th and 23rd, respectively. Shortly after, Britain appointed Sir Cyril Ratcliffe to chair two boundary commissions, one for Bengal and one for Punjab, to determine which territories to assign to each country. Each boundary commission consisted of 5 people, 1. A chairman, Ratcliffe, 2. 2 members nominated by the Indian National Congress, 3. 2 members nominated by the Muslim League. After arriving in India on 8 July 1947, Ratcliffe was given just 5 weeks to decide on a border. The award given by Sir Cyril Ratcliffe in his report of 12 August 1947 marks the boundary between India and Pakistan to be demarcated on the site. The report was published on 17 August, i.e. 2 days after independence. As the award was not presented before the independence, it has created a lot of confusion. The flags of both India and Pakistan were flown in the region as people believed they were on the correct side. Later, they discovered themselves on the opposite side of the newly drawn border. Ratcliffe Line. The Ratcliffe Line was the boundary between the Indian and Pakistani portions of the Punjab province and Bengal Presidency of British India. It was named after Cyril Ratcliffe, who served as the joint chairman of the boundary commissions for the Punjab and Bengal provinces. The demarcation line was published on 17 August 1947 upon the partition of British India. Today, its western side is part of the India-Pakistan border, while its eastern side is the Bangladesh-India border. UPSC 2014, the Ratcliffe Committee was appointed to A. Solve the problem of minorities in India. B. Give effect to the Independence Bill. C. Delimit the boundaries between India and Pakistan. D. Enquire into the riots in East Bengal. Answer. Option C. 29.7 Indian Independence Act of 1947. The Indian Independence Act of 1947 was passed by the Parliament of the United Kingdom based on the Mountbatten Plan and received royal assent on 18 July 1947. The Act ended British rule and created two new independent dominions, India and Pakistan. It also gave them the right to secede from the British Commonwealth. The Act declared India as an independent and sovereign state from 15 August 1947. The Act declared Pakistan as an independent and sovereign state from 14 August 1947. Salient features. The Act abolished the office of the Secretary of State for India and transferred its functions to the Secretary of State for Commonwealth Affairs. The title of Emperor of India for the British Crown. All existing treaties with the princely states, i.e. paramountcy over the princely states, lapsed. It lapsed the treaty relations with tribal areas. It discontinued appointment to civil services and reservation of posts by the Secretary of State for India. It authorized the constituent assemblies of both dominions to frame and adopt a new constitution for their territories. To repeal any act passed by the British Parliament, including the Independence Act itself. To act as the Parliament to make laws for their respective territories till the new constitutions were drafted and enacted. Till the framing of new constitutions, the Act provided for the governance of the new dominions and provinces by the Government of India Act 1935. However, the dominions had the authority to make changes to the Act. It ended the British Crown's power to veto or reserve bills. The Act abolished the office of Viceroy. It provided that on the advice of the Dominion Cabinet, the British King would appoint a Governor-General for each Dominion as the constitutional head of the states until the formation of new constitutions. The Governor-General and Governors of various provinces became the constitutional executive heads. Should act on the advice of the respective Council of Ministers. would not have veto power. No law passed by the British Parliament after 15 August 1947 would extend to either of the dominions unless passed in the respective assemblies. Lord Mountbatten continued as Governor-General, and Jawaharlal Nehru was appointed India's first Prime Minister. Muhammad Ali Jinnah became Pakistan's Governor-General, and Liaquat Ali Khan became Prime Minister. 29.8. Independence with partition. Why Congress accepted partition? The partition of India is often seen as the result of the British policy of divide and rule or the supposedly age-old rift between Hindus and Muslims, depending on the ideological stance of the writer. The question that remains today is why the Congress, which had fought for unity for many years, agreed to partition. One perspective is that Congress leaders succumbed to the temptation of power and struck a deal with the British, which gave them quick power while the nation paid the price of partition. This view is both simplistic and incorrect. The Congress's decision to accept partition was not due to the personal shortcomings of its leaders but rather a consequence of the organization's long-term failure to integrate Muslim masses into the nationalist movement. Despite efforts, the Congress couldn't bridge the gap and counter the rising tide of Muslim communalism, ultimately leading to the acceptance of partition as a pragmatic solution to avoid a potential civil war. In April 1947, Congress President Kripalani told the Viceroy, "Rather than have a battle, we shall let them have their Pakistan." From its inception, Congress had two objectives. 1. Creating a united nation by bringing together diverse classes, communities, groups, and regions. 2. Securing independence from British rule. While the Congress was successful in fostering nationalist consciousness and exerting pressure on the British to leave India, it failed to unify the nation, particularly with regard to integrating the Muslims. This contradiction, the success and failure of the national movement, is reflected in the independence partition dichotomy. A pragmatic solution to avert widespread bloodshed and communal violence. The nationalist leaders agreed to the partition of India not because there were two nations in India, a Hindu nation and a Muslim nation, but to avoid large-scale bloodbaths and communal riots. Over the past 70 years or so, had created a situation where the alternative to partition was the mass killing of lakhs of innocent people in senseless and barbaric communal riots. If these riots had been confined to one section of the country, the Congress leaders could have tried to curb them and taken a strong stand against partition. But unfortunately, the riots were taking place everywhere and actively involved both Hindus and Muslims. On top of it all, the country was still ruled by foreigners who did little to check the riots. The culmination of the League's pursuit of a sovereign Muslim state. The Congress accepted the partition because it had become inevitable. The acceptance of partition in 1947 was only the final act of gradual concession to the League's unwavering advocacy of a sovereign Muslim state. Cripps Mission, 1942. It accepted the autonomy of Muslim-majority provinces. Gandhi-Jinnah talks, 1944. Gandhiji accepted the right of self-determination of Muslim-majority provinces. Cabinet Mission, 1946. Though Congress opposed compulsory grouping, it conceded the possibility of Muslim-majority provinces. CWC Resolution, March 1947. The Congress Working Committee, CWC, passed a resolution that Punjab must be partitioned if the country was divided. Rejecting the two-nation theory. Nationalist leaders did not accept the two-nation theory, i.e. to separate countries for Hindus and Muslims. Nationalist leaders did not agree to hand over one-third of the country to the Muslim League as the latter wanted. They agreed to the separation of only those areas where the influence of the Muslim League was predominant. Punjab and Bengal were to be partitioned. In the northwest frontier province and the Sylhet district of Assam, where the influence of the League was doubtful, a plebiscite was to be held. In other words, the country was to be partitioned but not based on Hinduism and Islam. Gandhi and partition. Gandhiji firmly opposed the partition. His position differed from Congress's, but he was not opposed to it. he proposed to the viceroy that Jinnah be prime minister. Gandhiji hoped this would satisfy Jinnah's ambition and help him give up his demand for Pakistan. However, the Congress leaders felt the proposal was too risky. Handing over control to Jinnah would mean leaving the field open to reactionary forces. Accordingly, Gandhiji withdrew his offer. The communalization of people made Gandhi accept the partition. At his daily prayer meeting on 4 June 1947, Gandhi explained that Congress accepted partition because the people wanted it, and that was the only way out. In his speech at the AICC meeting on 14 June 1947, Gandhi advised congressmen to accept partition as an unavoidable necessity for the present. He urged them not to embrace it in their hearts but rather to fight for its reversal in the future when passions would subside. Day of Independence on 15 August 1947, India celebrated its first day of freedom with joy. At the midnight session of the Constituent Assembly on the night of 14 August 1947, Jawaharlal Nehru, expressing the feelings of the people, made his "Tryst with Destiny" speech. The session began with the singing of Vande Mataram and the President's address. On the day of independence, political prisoners were released to mark the coming of freedom. Public ceremonies were held in all major cities to mark the day. Mahatma Gandhi was not present in the capital. He was in Calcutta but did not attend any function or hoist a flag. He marked the day with a 24-hour fast. He spent the day in Calcutta, praying, fasting, and spinning. On this day, most celebrations acknowledged the harsh reality of partition. It symbolized independence and partition, illustrating the success and failure of the anti-colonial movement. The anti-colonial movement succeeded in achieving independence but failed to integrate most Muslims into the national movement fully. Tryst with Destiny speech at the midnight session of the Constituent Assembly on the night of 14 August 1947, Jawaharlal Nehru said, "Long years ago, we made a tryst with destiny, and now the time comes when we shall redeem our pledge, not wholly or in full measure, but very substantially. At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom. A moment comes, which comes but rarely in history, when we step out from the old to the new, when an age ends, and when the soul of a nation, long suppressed, finds utterance." Partition or Holocaust. India became independent on 15 August 1947. The sacrifices of generations of patriots and the blood of countless martyrs had borne fruit. However, the joy of our country's independence from colonial rule was tarnished by the violence and brutality of partition. The partition of British India into the sovereign states of India and Pakistan led to many sudden developments. A new country was born, and there was unprecedented genocidal violence and migration. Several 100,000 people were killed, and innumerable women were raped and abducted. Millions were uprooted and transformed into refugees in alien lands. Probably, some 15 million had to move across hastily constructed frontiers separating India and Pakistan. People became homeless, abruptly losing all their immovable property and most of their movable assets. They were separated from relatives and friends, torn away from their homes, fields, and fortunes, as well as from cherished childhood memories. Stripped of their local or regional cultures, they were compelled to start rebuilding their lives from scratch. One-man army. Gandhiji made every effort to halt the communal violence. Committed to upholding his lifelong principle of non-violence and his conviction that people's hearts could be changed, he embarked on tours to riot-affected areas. From October 1946 to April 1947, Gandhiji visited Noakhali in East Bengal, present-day Bangladesh, and Bihar. Subsequently, he also toured the riot-torn slums of Calcutta and Delhi. Gandhi aimed to prevent Hindus and Muslims from killing each other, and he took great care to reassure minority communities throughout his heroic endeavors. Culmination to partition. The following factors were responsible for the communal politics and, finally, the partition of India. British policy after 1857. The unity of the people during the 1857 revolt frightened the British, who then decided to follow the policy of divide and rule. Immediately after the revolt, they repressed Muslims, confiscated their lands and property on a large scale, and declared Hindus to be their favorites. After 1870, with the rise of the nationalist movement, majority Hindus, this policy was reversed. To check the growth of national unity, they attempted to turn upper-class and middle-class Muslims against the nationalist movement. They encouraged Syed Ahmad Khan, Raja Shiva Prasad of Banaras, and other pro-British individuals to start an anti-Congress movement. Syed Ahmad Khan laid the foundations of Muslim communalism in the 1880s. He declared that the political interests of Hindus and Muslims were not the same but different and even divergent. He also preached that, since the Hindus formed the larger part of the Indian population, they would dominate the Muslims in case of the weakening or withdrawal of British rule. All India Muslim League, in 1906, under the leadership of the Aga Khan, the Nawab of Dhaka, Khwaja Salimullah Bahadur, and Nawab Mohsinul Mulk, the educated Muslims, Muslim Nawabs and landlords founded the All India Muslim League. Its political activities were directed against the Hindus and the National Congress. Separate electorates for Muslims created by the colonial government in 1909 and expanded in 1919 crucially shaped the nature of communal politics. Separate electorates tempted politicians working within this system to use sectarian slogans and gather a following by distributing favors to their own religious groups. The logic of electoral politics deepened and hardened these identities. Community identities no longer indicated simple differences in faith and belief. They came to mean active opposition and hostility between communities. Hindu Mahasabha, All India Hindu Mahasabha was founded in 1915 as an umbrella organization of regional Hindu Sabhas. It advocated the interests of Orthodox Hindus. Lucknow Congress Session. In the Lucknow session, Congress accepted the separate electorates for Muslims, paving the way for the future resurgence of communalism in Indian politics. Events of the 1920s and early 1930s, communal identities were consolidated by the following developments during the 1920s and early 1930s. The Khilafat movement mixed religion with politics, which ultimately strengthened communal forces. Muslims were angered by music before mosque, by the cow protection movement, and by the efforts of the Arya Samaj to bring back to the Hindu fold, Shuddhi, those who had recently converted to Islam. Hindus were angered by the rapid spread of tabligh, propaganda, and Tanzim, organization, after 1923. 1937 provincial elections. After the 1937 elections, the Muslim League wanted to form a joint government with the Congress in the United Provinces. The Congress had won an absolute majority in the province, so it rejected the offer. The Congress also rejected the Muslim League's proposal because the League tended to support landlordism, which Congress wished to abolish. Some scholars argue that this rejection convinced the League that if India remained united, then Muslims would find it difficult to gain political power because they would remain a minority. After its poor performance in the 1937 elections, the Muslim League doubled its efforts to expand its social support. It started to spread the notion that the Muslim minority was in danger of being engulfed by the Hindu majority. It propagated the unscientific and unhistorical theory that Hindus and Muslims were two separate nations that could never live together. Pakistan Resolution. In 1940, the Muslim League passed a resolution demanding the partition of the country and the creation of a state called Pakistan after independence. British concession. The Muslim League remained steadfast in its demand for a separate Pakistan throughout the negotiations with the British under the August Offer, Cripps Proposal, Shimla Conference, and Cabinet Mission. Instead of bypassing the Muslim League, the British government gave the League a virtual veto. This convinced the League that they would get a separate Pakistan if they remained stuck to their demand. 1946 elections. the League's success in the seats reserved for Muslims was spectacular. It won all 30 reserved constituencies in the central legislature and 442 out of 509 seats reserved for Muslims in the provinces. 1946 elections established the League as the dominant party among Muslim voters, seeking to vindicate its claim to be the sole spokesman of India's Muslims. Books, films and play. Books on partition. The following books narrate the stories of ordinary people facing difficulties during the partition. 1. Punjabi Century, 1857 to 1947, by Prakash Tandon. 2. The Other Side of Silence, by Urvashi Butalia. 3. Siyah Hashe, Black Margins, by Saadat Hassan Manto. 4. Love is Stronger Than Hate, A Remembrance of 1947, by Khushdewa Singh, a Sikh doctor. Films on partition. 1. Meghe Dhaka Tara and Suvarnarekha, directed by Ritvik Ghatak. 2. Garam Hawa, directed by M.S. Sathyu. 3. Tamas, directed by Govind Nihalani. Play on partition. Jis Lahore Nahi Vekhya O Zamyai Ne, He Who Has Not Seen Lahore, Has Not Been Born, directed by Habib Tanvir. UPSC 2019 assesses the role of British imperial power in complicating the process of transfer of power during the 1940s. 29.9. National Flag of India. The National Flag of India was adopted in its present form during the Constituent Assembly meeting on 22 July 1947. The national flag of India is a horizontal tricolour of deep saffron, kesari, at the top, white in the middle, and dark green at the bottom, which are in equal proportion. The flag's width-to-length ratio is 2:3. In the center of the white band is a navy blue wheel, which represents the chakra. Its design is that of the wheel, which appears on the abacus of the Sarnath lion capital of Ashoka. Its diameter approximates the width of the white band, and it has 24 spokes. Evolution of the national flag of India. Nivedita's flag. Sister Nivedita designed the first national flag of India in 1904. It was designed using two colors, yellow and red. In the center, the symbol of Vajra, signifying strength, and a white lotus, showing purity, were depicted. The Bengali word, Bande Matram, was written on it. Flag during Swadeshi movement in 1906. During the Swadeshi and boycott struggle, the Indian flag was hoisted for the first time in Parsi Bagan Square in Calcutta. The flag was reportedly designed by Sachindra Prasad Bose and Hemchandra Kanungo. It consisted of 3 horizontal strips of green, yellow and red, with Vande Matram written in the middle. The green strip had 8 half-open lotuses, and the red strip had symbols of the sun and a crescent moon. Saptarishi flag. Madam Bhikaji Kama hoisted an Indian flag on 22 August 1907 at the International Socialist Congress Summit in Stuttgart, Germany. This was the first time an Indian flag had been hoisted in a foreign land. The flag was a rectangular tricolour consisting of green, saffron and red. The upper green strip had 8 lotus flowers to represent 8 Indian provinces of the pre-independence period, and the flag name, Saptarishi, represented the 7 sages of ancient India. The middle strip was saffron in colour and had Vande Matram written in the Devanagari script. The bottom strip was red in colour, with a rising sun on the left and a crescent moon on the right end, representing India's major religious communities. Flag by Home Rule Movement. In 1917, Dr. Annie Besant and Lokmanya Tilak adopted a new flag as part of the Home Rule movement. The flag had 5 alternating red and 4 green horizontal stripes, with 7 stars arranged in the Saptarishi configuration. One top corner was occupied by a white crescent and star, while the other had the Union Jack. It signified autonomous rule for Indians within the colonial empire. Origin of the present flag. The design of the present Indian flag is attributed to Pingali Venkaiah. In 1921, at the Vijayawada Congress session, Pingali Venkaiah presented a design of a flag to Mahatma Gandhi. The flag consisted of 3 stripes, red, white and green, representing multiple communities living in harmony in India. A spinning wheel was superimposed in the center, signifying the country's progress. In 1931, a formal resolution adopted Pingali Venkaiah's flag with a slight modification. It replaced the red strip of Venkaiah's flag with saffron. The saffron was for courage, white for peace and green for fertility and growth. Finally, on 22 July 1947, the Constituent Assembly adopted the flag of India. The spinning wheel was replaced by the Dharma Chakra of Emperor Ashoka, symbolizing truth and life. This came to be called the Tiranga. 29.10 Summary. Direct Action Day. After the failure of the cabinet mission, Jinnah called for a direct action day to press the League's demand for Pakistan. On the designated day, 16 August 1946, bloody riots broke out in Calcutta. The inevitability of the partition. In Bengal, after the communal disturbances in Calcutta and Noakhali, 1946, Hindus distrusted the chief minister, Muslim League, and demanded the partition of the province based on communal lines. In March 1947, the CWC voted to divide the Punjab into 2 halves, one with a Muslim majority and the other with a Hindu-Sikh majority, and it asked to apply a similar principle to Bengal. Interim government. The interim government was formed on 2 September 1946 by Congress members alone, with Nehru as de facto head. Finally, on 26 October 1946, the League joined the interim government. Clement Attlee's announcement. On 20 February 1947, the British Prime Minister, Clement Attlee, announced that the British would withdraw from India by 30 June 1948 and that if the Constituent Assembly was not fully representative, power would be transferred to more than one central government. Mountbatten Plan, 3rd June Plan. On 3 June 1947, the Viceroy, Lord Mountbatten, proposed the Mountbatten Plan to divide India but retain maximum unity. Punjab and Bengal would be divided so that the limited Pakistan that emerged would meet both the Congress and League's positions to some extent. The Congress and Muslim League accepted the Mountbatten Plan. Indian Independence Act of 1947. The Indian Independence Act of 1947 ended British rule and created 2 new independent dominions, India and Pakistan. End of chapter 30. Popular struggle in the princely states. During British rule, British India was divided into 2 types of territory. 1. British Indian provinces under the direct control of the British government. 2. Princely states ruled by princes. At the time of independence, the princely states covered 1/3 of the land and 1/4 of the population of the British Indian Empire. Before 1857, the British used every opportunity to annex princely states. However, during the 1857 revolt, most Indian princes sided with the British and helped quash the rebellion, which caused the British to change their approach towards the Indian states. After 1857, the British abandoned the policy of annexation and guaranteed protection to the princely states against any internal or external threat. In return, the princely states accepted the British paramountcy. Autocratic rule in the princely states suffered from the misrule of their local ruler. Most of the princes were autocratic, lived a luxurious lifestyle, and paid no heed to the welfare of the people. In the state, peasants were oppressed, the burden of the land tax was usually heavier than in British India, education was retarded, health and other social services were extremely backward, and freedom of the press and other civil rights hardly existed. All these ruined the people's economy and encouraged them to revolt against feudatory chiefs. some Indian rulers, such as the Maharaja of Baroda, made efforts to introduce reforms in the administration and taxation systems and even granted powers to the people to participate in government. However, such states constituted a minority. Ultimately, the British government was responsible for the Indian state's situation in the 20th century. As the national movement gained momentum, princes were pressured to resist it. Support for nationalism by rulers was discouraged, and potential reformers faced British interference, hindering positive initiatives. Establishment of the Praja Mandals. The rise of the national movement in British India influenced the people of the states, shaping their awareness of democracy, responsible government, and civil liberties. During the 1910s, the urban educated people of the princely states formed the Praja Mandal, states people's conferences, or Lok Parishads in some states. They demanded the greater recruitment of the state's people in government employment, the guarantee of civil liberties, especially the freedom of the press, assembly, and association, and, in a few instances, even the establishment of a representative assembly in the state. The non-cooperation and Khilafat movement, initiated in 1920, significantly impacted the state's people. Due to its impact, a series of Praja Mandals, states people's conferences, were established to promote the nationalist creed in the princely states. During the 1920s, the Praja Mandals campaigned against the feudatory rulers and demanded the establishment of a responsible government. British response. In 1921, the British established a Chamber of Princes, Narendra Mandal, to provide a forum for the rulers of the princely states of India to voice their needs. In reality, it was formed to preserve the privileges of the princely states and prevent the spread of rising nationalism in them. Chamber of Princes, Narendra Mandal. Before 1857, the British used every opportunity to annex princely states. However, during the 1857 revolt, most Indian princes sided with the British and helped quash the rebellion, which caused the British to change their approach towards the Indian states. After 1857, the British abandoned the policy of annexation and guaranteed protection to the princely states against any internal or external threat. After 1857, the British government conducted its relations with the princely states through the political department, which was directly under the control of the Viceroy. Lord Lytton, Lord Curzon, and Lord Minto suggested a new institution to establish closer relations with the Indian states. However, these consecutive Viceroy suggestions have not materialized. Finally, the Montagu-Chelmsford report recommended a permanent body known as the Council of Princes to inform the government of the sentiments and wishes of the Indian princes. The Chamber of Princes, Narendra Mandal, a consultative and advisory body of the rulers of the princely states, was established in 1920 under the Government of India Act 1919. It was established to provide a forum for the rulers of the princely states of India to voice their needs and aspirations to the colonial government of British India. In reality, it was formed to preserve the privileges of the princely states and prevent the spread of rising nationalism in them. Functioning of the Chamber of Princes. The Chamber of Princes typically convened once a year, presided over by the Viceroy of India, but it established a standing committee that met more frequently. The Chamber elected a permanent officer, the Chancellor, to chair the standing committee from its princely ranks. The Chamber first met on 8 February 1921 under the Chancellorship of Maharaja Ganga Singh, ruler of Bikaner, and consisted of 120 princes. The Chamber of Princes has allowed the princes to meet and discuss questions of common concern. Thus, its creation led to the British abandonment of their long-established policy of isolating the Indian rulers from each other. Aspirations and fragmentation. The Chamber of Princes was established as a platform to promote the interests of the princely order and express its desire for a lasting relationship between the state and the imperial government. However, some important Indian states, such as Hyderabad, Mysore, and Baroda, did not join the Chamber of Princes, which weakened its basic structure. The Chamber of Princes survived until the end of the British Raj in 1947. All India States People's Conference, ASP, at the initiative of leaders from states like Balwantarai Mehta, Maniklal Kothari and G. R. Abhyankar, the first All India States People's Conference was convened in Bombay in December 1927. It was presided over by Dewan Bahadur Ram Chandra Rao. The conference aimed to influence the state government to initiate the necessary administrative reforms by leveraging the collective opinion of the state's people. It passed resolutions that made wide-ranging demands on social, economic, and political rights, representative political institutions, free speech and press, etc. More than 1,500 delegates from more than 70 states attended. The conference also expressed a wish to garner support from the INC and appointed M. Kothari and B. S. Pathik to senior leaders of the ASP to advocate and secure that support. Their efforts proved successful when, during the 1927 Madras session, the Congress decided to support the democratic struggle of the people in the princely states. Butler Committee, 1927. In 1927, the British government appointed a committee chaired by Sir Harcourt Butler to investigate and clarify the relationship between the paramount power of the British Raj in India and the rulers of the princely states. The committee's report of 1929 reaffirmed the paramountcy doctrine. It also recommended that the state should not be transferred without their consent to a relationship with a new government in British India that is responsible for an Indian legislature. Role of INC. When INC started its fight against British rule, it had consciously distanced itself from the princes and the political mobilization in the princely states. This strategy of non-interference continued even with the coming of mass mobilization in the early Gandhian phase. Nagpur Session, 1920. In 1920, for the first time, Congress passed a resolution at the Nagpur Congress Session, 1920, asking the princes to grant a full responsible government in the state. The Congress felt that the political activities in the state should be organized and controlled by local Praja Mandals and should not look to outside support. Hence, the Congress allowed persons from states to join the Congress organization with the condition that Congress members in the states could not take part in any political activity as congressmen or in the name of Congress but only in either their private capacity, as individuals, or as members of the local political associations. However, the informal relation between INC and local Praja Mandals existed and paved the way for more intense mobilization patterns in the states in subsequent phases. Madras Session, 1927. In its 1927 Madras Session, the Congress supported the democratic struggle of the people of the princely states. Lahore Session, 1929. In the Lahore Session of the Congress, 1929, Nehru, representing a leftward shift in the priorities of Congress, declared that the fate of states was linked with the rest of India and that only the people of states would have the right to determine the political future of the states. Change in Congress policy. In the mid-30s, two key developments impacted the Indian states. 1. The Government of India Act of 1935, it proposed an all-India federation, establishing a direct constitutional link between the Indian states and British India. However, the princes were to nominate the states' representatives. The INC and other organizations demanded elected representatives. 2. Formation of Congress ministries in the provinces, 1937. It instilled confidence and fueled political activity in the people of the Indian states. These recent developments resulted in a notable shift in Congress policy towards movement in the princely states. Haripura Session, 1938. In the Haripura Session, 1938, Congress announced its aim to attain complete independence for the whole of India, including the princely states. Congress reiterated its policy that movements in the states should not be launched in the name of Congress but should rely on their own independent strength and fight through local organizations. Gandhi's statement. In a January 1939 interview with the Times of India, Gandhi expressed that non-intervention by the Congress was wise when the people of the states were not awakened. However, he believed it would be cowardice when there was widespread awakening and a determination to endure suffering for their rights. Gandhi emphasized that legal and constitutional boundaries became irrelevant once the people were prepared. Tripuri Session, 1939. At its Tripuri session in March 1939, the Congress passed a resolution incorporating Gandhiji's idea. The Congress passed a resolution facilitating the integration of the political struggle in the princely states and the rest of India. The resolution stated that it was abandoning its previous policy of non-interference in the struggle in the princely states. Ludhiana session of ASP in 1939, the ASP elected Jawaharlal Nehru as its president for the Ludhiana session. This became a symbol of the fusion of the movements in princely India and British India. Quit India Movement, 1942. During the Quit India Movement in 1942, the INC did not differentiate between British India and the Indian states. As a result, the call for struggle was extended to the people of the states. This led to the people of the states formally joining the fight for Indian independence. Apart from their demand for a responsible government, they requested the British to leave India and demanded that the states become an integral part of the Indian nation. Integration of Princely States Mountbatten Plan, 3rd June 1947. Just before independence, on 3rd June 1947, the Viceroy, Mountbatten, announced that the paramountcy of the British Crown over the princely states would lapse, and they were free to join India or Pakistan. The decision was left not to the people but to the princely rulers of these states. This was a serious problem because if the princely state within India joined Pakistan, it could threaten the existence of a united India. Efforts by the government. A new department was established with the goal of aiding in the integration of princely states. Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel was appointed its head, with V. P. Menon as the secretary. Under the guidance of Lord Mountbatten, their primary responsibility was to persuade the princes to accede to the Indian Union. On 5th July 1947, Sardar Patel invited the princely states to join the forthcoming Indian Union. Bikaner, Baroda and a few other states from Rajasthan were among the first states to join the Indian Union. However, several other states were unwilling to join India. Some saw this as an opportunity to secure independent statehood, while others wanted to join Pakistan. Finally, all but 3 of the 565 princely states signed instruments of accession and standstill agreements with the forthcoming Indian Union by 14 August 1947. The 3 states that hadn't signed the instruments of accession by then were Junagadh, Hyderabad, and Kashmir. Integration of some important princely states. Travancore. The Travancore state was one of the first princely states to refuse accession to the Indian Union. Sir C. P. Ramaswamy Iyer, the Dewan of Travancore, declared that his state would become independent. The Travancore was rich in resources, including monazite. Thorium, a monazite byproduct, is a crucial ingredient in operating nuclear reactors and manufacturing nuclear weapons. It is believed that Sir C.P. Iyer had secret ties with the UK government, which were in favour of an independent Travancore. The UK government hoped that this would grant them exclusive access to monazite and could give Britain an advantage in the nuclear arms race. Ultimately, the Indian government convinced C.P. Iyer, and on 30th July 1947, Travancore joined India. Manipur. A few days before independence, the Maharaja of Manipur, Bodha Chandra Singh, signed the instrument of accession with the Indian government. This was on the assurance that Manipur's internal autonomy would be maintained. Under the pressure of public opinion, the Maharaja held elections in Manipur in June 1948, and the state became a constitutional monarchy. Thus, Manipur was the first part of India to hold an election based on a universal adult franchise. There were sharp differences in the Legislative Assembly of Manipur over the merger of Manipur with India. While the state Congress wanted the merger, other political parties opposed it. The Government of India signed the merger agreement with Maharaja of Manipur in September 1949 without consulting the popularly elected Legislative Assembly of Manipur. This caused a lot of anger and resentment in Manipur, the repercussions of which are still being felt. Junagadh. The Nawab of Junagadh, Muhammad Mahawat Khanji III, ruled over a large Hindu population. He decided to join Pakistan. The disturbed situation in Junagadh led to a complete breakdown of the economy, and consequently, the Nawab fled to Karachi. Vallabhbhai Patel deployed troops to compel the annexation of three main principalities. The Dewan was forced to accede to the Indian government due to an acute shortage of funds and forces. Subsequently, on 20th February 1948, a plebiscite was conducted in the state, and 91% of the voters chose to join India. Jammu and Kashmir. Before 1947, the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir, J&K, was ruled by a Hindu ruler, Hari Singh. He wanted to have an independent status for his state. The leaders of Pakistan believed that Kashmir belonged to them because the majority of the population in the region was Muslim. However, Sheikh Abdullah of the National Conference led a popular movement in the state against joining Pakistan. In October 1947, Pakistan sent tribal infiltrators from its side to capture Kashmir. This compelled the Maharaja to request military assistance from India. On 26 October 1947, Maharaja Hari Singh of Jammu and Kashmir signed the instrument of accession with India. In return, India provided military aid and drove out the infiltrators from the Kashmir Valley. Hyderabad. In 1947, Usman Ali Khan Asaf Jah VII, the last Nizam of the princely state of Hyderabad, refused to join India and decided to have an independent state. The people of the state wanted to join India. They launched a final struggle against the Nizam, and Swami Ramanand Tirtha played a crucial role in the movement. To suppress the movement, Nizam used his army, which was known as the Razakars. They subjected the people to torture, coercion, tyranny, looting, arson, and other forms of oppression. On 29 November 1947, the Nizam signed a standstill agreement with the Indian government. However, repression intensified, and the Rajakar threat increased. Operation Polo. In September 1948, when it became clear that the Nizam would not join the Indian Union, the Government of India decided to launch a military attack. This operation was known as Operation Polo or Operation Caterpillar. The Indian Army started the operation by entering the state on 13 September 1948. The operation ended on 18 September 1948 when the Nizam surrendered. The Indian Army was welcomed as an army of liberation that ended the oppression of the Nizam and the Razakars. 30.1 Summary. Before 1857, the British used every opportunity to annex princely states. However, after 1857, the British abandoned this policy and guaranteed protection to the princely states against any internal or external threat. Praja Mandal. The rise of the national movement in British India influenced the people of the states. During the 1910s, the urban educated people of the princely states formed the Praja Mandal in some states. They demanded the greater recruitment of the state's people in government employment and the guarantee of civil liberties, especially the freedom of the press, assembly, and association. During the 1920s, the Praja Mandals demanded the establishment of a responsible government. Chamber of Princes. In 1921, the British established a Chamber of Princes, Narendra Mandal, to preserve the privileges of the princely states and prevent the spread of rising nationalism in them. Role of INC. When INC started its fight against British rule, it had consciously distanced itself from the princes and the political mobilization in the princely states. This strategy of non-interference continued even with the coming of mass mobilization in the early Gandhian phase. The Congress soon changed its policy. In the Haripura session, 1938, Congress announced its aim to attain complete independence for the whole of India, including the princely states. At its Tripuri session in March 1939, the Congress passed a resolution facilitating the integration of the political struggle in the princely states and the rest of India. Integration of princely states. Mountbatten Plan, announced on 3 June 1947, declared that the British Crown's paramountcy over the princely states would lapse, and they were free to join India or Pakistan. However, the decision was left not to the people but to the princely rulers of these states. On 14 August 1947, 562 of the 565 princely states in India signed the instruments of accession and standstill agreements with the upcoming Indian Union. However, Junagadh, Hyderabad, and Kashmir had not signed the agreement by then. Eventually, all three states joined India. End of chapter 31. Socio-religious reform movements 2. 31.1. Non-Brahman movements. Under British rule, Indian society was structured around a fourfold caste system based on the Varna system. This caste system included four Varnas: Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. The untouchables or outcasts, Dalits, consisted of numerous castes and were placed below these four Varnas. The Brahmins at the top had many rights and privileges, while the untouchables at the lowest level were deprived of these rights and privileges. During this period, Dalits were considered outcasts, and their shadow was considered polluting. They had to live outside the villages and were prohibited from entering villages due to their polluted nature. They were not allowed to take water from public wells and lakes and were prohibited from entering temples. Dalits. During British rule, Dalits were called depressed classes. The Government of India Act of 1935 used the term scheduled caste for them. The Constitution of India recognizes them as scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. Gandhiji called them Harijan, i.e. children of God. During the 19th century, educated Indians started socio-cultural movements to reform Indian culture and traditional institutions. They attacked the caste system and caste discrimination and tried to improve the social status of Dalits. However, these early social reformers mostly came from the already advanced upper caste, as they were the first to get the opportunity to adopt new English education. Gradually, with the spread of education, by the second half of the 19th century, people from within the non-Brahman castes began organizing movements against caste discrimination and demanded social equality and justice. Mahatma Phule, Sri Narayan Guru, Periyar, and Dr. Ambedkar were leaders from non-Brahman castes and worked among them. They worked for the upliftment of depressed classes and tried to create a sense of self-esteem among them. Mahatma Phule, 1827–90. Jyotirao, Jyotiba, Phule was born in 1827 in a Shudra Mali family, gardener, in Pune. He received his initial education in a school set up by Christian missionaries. Being a member of the oppressed Shudras, Phule suffered from social and economic disadvantages and understood the problems of the untouchable, Ati Shudras. Christian missionaries and Thomas Paine's book, Rights of Man, profoundly impacted Phule. Upliftment of the downtrodden. Phule worked for the liberation and upliftment of the depressed classes and women. He started schools for girls, untouchables, and widows. He attacked the practice of female infanticide, supported widow remarriage, and opened a home for widows in 1854. Phule was concerned about the plight of upper caste women and the humiliation of the low castes. He argued against all forms of inequality, demanded equal rights for both men and women, and envisaged a society based on liberty, equality, and fraternity. Opposition to the caste system, anti-caste movement. Phule attacked the caste system and rejected the Hindu religion as it justified the caste system. He proposed that Shudras, laboring castes, and Ati Shudras, untouchables, should unite to challenge caste discrimination. Satyashodhak Samaj. On 24 September 1873, Phule started Satyashodhak Samaj to organize the lower classes, liberate them from the domination of Brahmins, and propagate caste equality. Satyashodhak Samaj aimed to end the priestly domination. It conducted rituals, such as marriages and death ceremonies, without the involvement of Brahman priests. In Satyashodhak marriages, the bride and groom would sing verses written by Phule in plain Marathi instead of a Brahman reciting obscure Sanskrit mantras. Campaign against Brahmanical supremacy. Phule attacked the Brahmins' claim that they were superior to others since they were Aryans. He argued that the Aryans were foreigners who invaded the subcontinent and subjugated the true natives of the land, the Shudras. Phule argued that alien Aryans created an unequal caste system to exploit the natives. Phule aimed to boost the morale of non-Brahmins by showcasing the egalitarian past of the united Shudras. Struggle for peasants and labourers. Phule adopted a pro-poor and pro-peasant outlook. He was concerned about the miseries of the labourers and peasants. Along with N.M. Lokhande, he organized peasants and workers and attempted to redress their grievances. In the 1880s-90s, Phule focused on mobilizing the Kumbi, Marathas, peasantry to project the unity of those who labored on the land. This shift of the focus on the Kumbi peasants led to the privileging of the Maratha identity and an assertion of their Kshatriyahud. On the flip side, it led to less emphasis on mobilizing Dalits. Journals. To promote his ideas, Phule published two journals, Deen Bandhu and Dinmitra. Lokhande later edited Deen Bandhu. Opposition to Congress. Phule attacked the Brahmo Samaj, the Prarthana Samaj, the Sarvajanik Sabha, and the Indian National Congress because he believed these organizations did not make concrete efforts to uplift the masses. Lahuji Vastad, 1794–1881. Lahuji Raghoba Salve was an Indian social reformer, Dalit activist, and freedom fighter. Lahuji learned wrestling from his father and became an expert wrestler, eventually earning the title of Vastad or Master. Lahuji owned a gymnasium at Ganjpet in Pune, where he also taught martial arts to many renowned people. Some of the most prominent revolutionaries visited the gymnasium, notably Jyotiba Phule, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and Vasudev Balwant Farke. Lahuji got acquainted with Jyotirao Phule's work for the liberation of depressed classes by educating them and joined his Satyashodhak Samaj. Lahuji was skilled in using a special weapon called Dandpata, and he played a key role in recruiting Dalit students for the Phule schools. Lahuji's physical strength played an important role in defending Phule and his wife, Savitri, from the physical attacks they faced. Prelims practice. Which of the following statements about Jyotirao Phule's Satyashodhak Samaj movement in Maharashtra is true? 1. The Satyashodhak Samaj was set up in 1873. 2. Phule argued that Brahmins were the progeny of alien Aryans. 3. Phule's focus on the Kumbi peasantry in the 1880s and 1890s led to a privileging of Maratha identity. Select the correct answer using the code given below. A. 1 and 2 only B, 2 only C, 1 and 3 only D, 1, 2 and 3. Answer, D, 1, 2 and 3. Sri Narayan Guru, 1856–1928, Narayan Guru was born in Kerala into the Ejhava caste, an untouchable caste. He worked to uplift the backward classes in Kerala, especially the Ejhava community. Guru argued against treating people unequally based on caste differences and proclaimed the ideals of unity for his people. According to him, all humankind belonged to the same caste. One of his famous statements was, Oru Jati, Oru Madam, Oru Devam Manushanu, one caste, one religion, one God for humankind. Aruvippuram movement. As a lower caste member, Narayana Guru was forbidden from entering the temple. Against this discrimination, in 1888, he picked up a rock from the Nayar river and consecrated it as Lord Shiva in Aruvippuram. This temple was open for everyone, including the lower caste, to practice their faith. Later, the Guru established many temples across Kerala. During that time, only Brahmins were allowed to install idols. Guru defeated this and consecrated a Shiva idol. This act triggered the anti-caste movement against upper caste domination in Kerala. SNDP. The Sri Narayana Dharma Pariplana Yogam, SNDP, was founded in 1903 by Dr. Padmanabhan Palpu and other Ejhava leaders, with Narayana Guru as its founder-president. It worked for the progress of backward communities both religiously and materially. E.V. Ramaswamy Nekar, 1879 to 1973, E.V. Ramaswamy Nekar, or Periyar, belonged to a merchant family in Tamil Nadu. He was an ascetic in his early life and studied Sanskrit scriptures. In 1920, Periyar became a member of Congress. He left the Congress in 1925 when he found that at a feast organized by nationalists, seating arrangements followed caste distinctions, that is, the lower castes were made to sit at a distance from the upper castes. Self-respect movement. Convinced that untouchables had to fight for their dignity, Periyar founded the self-respect movement in 1925. The self-respect movement aimed to uplift the Dravidians and expose the control of Brahmins over all aspects of Hindu life through tyrannical and deceptive methods. Against caste discrimination. Periyar stood fiercely against caste and religion. When Mahatma Gandhi defended Varnashram Dharma, he strongly opposed it. Periyar argued that untouchables were the true upholders of an original Tamil and Dravidian culture which had been subjugated by Brahmins. He felt that all religious authorities saw social divisions and inequality as God-given. Therefore, untouchables had to free themselves from all religions to achieve social equality. Opposition to Hindu scriptures. Periyar was an outspoken critic of Hindu scriptures, especially the codes of Manu, the ancient lawgiver, the Bhagavad Gita and the Ramayana. He said that these texts had been used to establish the authority of Brahmins over lower castes and the domination of men over women. Social reforms. Periyar was against child marriage and enforced widowhood. He encouraged intercaste marriages and participated in intercaste dining. In 1921, during the anti-liquor campaign, he cut down 1,000 coconut trees on his own farm. In 1924, Periyar actively participated in the Vaikam Satyagraha to secure the right for untouchables to use a road near a temple in Vaikam, Kerala. Journals. Periyar started the Tamil journals Kudi Arasu, Purachi, and Viduthalai to propagate his ideals. UPSC CSE 2019, consider the following pairs. Movement Organization Leader 1. All India Anti-Untouchability League, Mahatma Gandhi 2. All India Kisan Sabha, Swami Sahajanand Saraswati 3. Self-Respect Movement, Nekar E.V. Ramaswamy. Which of the pairs given above is correctly matched? A. 1 only B, 1 and 2 only C, 2 and 3 only D, 1, 2 and 3. Answer, A. D, 1, 2 and 3. Dr. B. R. Ambedkar. Dr. B. R. Ambedkar, also known as Baba Saheb Ambedkar, was born on 14 April 1891 in Mho, Madhya Pradesh. He was born into a Meher family and experienced caste discrimination. In school, he was forced to sit outside the classroom on the ground and was not allowed to drink water from taps used by upper caste children. After finishing school, he got a fellowship to go to the US for higher studies. On his return to India in 1919, he wrote extensively about upper caste power in contemporary society. Throughout his life, Ambedkar worked to remove the practice of untouchability and for the upliftment of the downtrodden. He criticized caste discrimination and gave a call to destroy the caste system in his book, The Annihilation of Caste. In 1920, he started the weekly Muknayak in Mumbai with the help of Chhatrapati Shahu Maharaj, Maharaja of Kolhapur. Southborough Commission. In 1917, the British government declared that it would form a responsible government in India. The British Parliament sent a committee chaired by Southborough to take view of various leaders of India and decide on a franchise. When Ambedkar was invited to testify before the Southborough Committee, he demanded the right to vote, the right to contest elections, separate electorates, and reservations for untouchables. Bahishkrit Hitakarni Sabha. In 1923, Dr. Ambedkar founded the Bahishkrit Hitakarni Sabha to spread education among Dalits. The Sabha established many schools, libraries, and hostels. Mahad Water Tank Satyagraha, 1927. Dalits were often denied access to public resources such as water bodies, temples, and schools. Ambedkar decided to draw water from a public lake to challenge this caste-based discrimination and launched the Mahad Satyagraha. On 20th March 1927, Dr. Ambedkar and his followers marched to the Chavdar Lake at Mahad, Raigad district, and drank water. The Satyagraha asserted the right to equality and equal access to public resources. Burning of Manusmriti, 1927. Dr. Ambedkar launched another Satyagraha in December 1927 in Mahad to assert the rights of the depressed classes. On 14th December, the court prohibited Dr. Ambedkar and his colleagues from accessing the Chavdar tank until further orders were issued. However, Dr. Ambedkar decided to continue his proposed Satyagraha from 25 to 27 December, even though he decided not to go to the tank until the pendency of the civil suit. On 25 December 1927, at Mahad, Dr. Ambedkar and his supporters burnt a copy of Manusmriti to symbolically reject the foundations of the caste system. The resolution proposing the burning of Manusmriti was moved by Gangadhar Nilkant Sahasrabuddhe, a Brahman associate of Ambedkar. Kallam Temple Entry Satyagraha, 1932-35. The Kallam Temple at Nasik had been a major place of worship for the Hindu devotees of Rama. However, the untouchables were denied entry into the temple. To establish the right of equality, Dr. Ambedkar launched a temple entry movement in March 1930 at Kallam Temple. He continued the struggle for about a month. However, upper caste Hindus did not open the gates for untouchables. The Satyagraha lasted until 1935. When Orthodox Hindus didn't open the gates for the Dalits, Dr. Ambedkar organized a conference of untouchables in 1935 at Yeola near Nashik. At the conference, Ambedkar declared, "I was born a Hindu because I had no control over this, but I shall not die a Hindu." Ambedkar led 3 temple entry movements between 1930 and 1935. Embraced Buddhism to spread and propagate the teachings of the Buddha, Ambedkar founded the Bharatiya Buddha Mahasabha in 1955. Finally, on 14 October 1956, at a congregation in Nagpur, he embraced Buddhism and advised his followers to accept the faith. Dalit periodicals. In the 19th century, educated Indians started a number of journals. However, most of these were started by Brahmins and did not discuss the challenges faced by Dalits. This led to the emergence of Dalit periodicals, in which Dalits discussed their issues. Gopal Baba Valankar, Shivram Jamba Kamble, Kisan Phagu Bansode and Dr. Ambedkar played an important role in discussing Dalit issues in journals or periodicals. Founder-editor Journal Magazine Gopal Baba Valankar, Vital Vidvansak Shivram Jamba Kamble, Somanshia Mitra, The Friend of the Depressed Classes, Kisan Phagu Bansode, Nirashrit Hind Nagrik, Vital Vidvansak, Majur Patrika and Chokhamela. Dr. B. R. Ambedkar Muknayak, Bahishkrit Bharat, Samantha, Janata and Prabuddha Bharat. Gopal Baba Valankar, 1840 to 1900. Gopal Baba Valankar was born into a Mahar family in 1840 near Mahad, Raigad district, Maharashtra. Valankar, an ex-army man, was influenced by Mahatma Phule. He believed in Phule's iron invasion theory and argued that untouchables were the indigenous inhabitants and the Brahman people were descended from Aryans who had invaded the country. In 1886, Valankar established the anti-caste organization, Anarya Dosh Parihar Samaj, to address the Dalit issues. In 1888, Valankar started a monthly journal, Vital Vidhwansak, which was the first to have the untouchables as its target audience. He is credited as the pioneer of the emergence of Dalit periodicals. UPSC CSE 2020, the Vital Vidhwansak, the first monthly journal to have the untouchable people as its target audience, was published by A. Gopal Baba Valankar B. Jyotiba Phule C. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi D. Bhimrao Ramji Ambedkar. Answer: A. Gopal Baba Valankar. 31.2. Contribution of reformers towards the upliftment of Dalits. Maharshi Vithal Ramji Shinde. Maharshi Vithal Ramji Shinde was a social reformer of Maharashtra who worked to uplift the depressed classes and remove untouchability. He was a follower of Prarthana Samaj and the Brahmo Samaj. In 1906, Shinde established the Depressed Classes Mission in Bombay for the upliftment of the untouchables. The mission aimed to spread education among the untouchables, provide them with employment, and try to remove social restrictions imposed on them. The mission started many schools for untouchables. Shinde repeatedly attempted to prioritize the issue of the untouchables on the agenda of Congress. Finally, in 1917, he succeeded in getting the Indian National Congress in its Calcutta session under the presidentship of Mrs. Besant to pass a resolution condemning the practice of untouchability. From 1918 to 1920, Shinde convened all the India anti-untouchability conferences. Some of these conferences were held under the presidency of Mahatma Gandhi and Maharaja Sahyajirao Gaikwad. Shinde also participated in the famous temple entry agitation at Vaikam in Kerala. Rajashri Chhatrapati Shahu Maharaj, 1874 to 1922, Rajashri Chhatrapati Shahu Maharaj, the king of the princely state of Kolhapur, was a social reformer who worked for the upliftment of lower castes. To provide equal opportunities to the backward or depressed classes, he established student hostels based on caste and provided scholarships to the backward classes in Kolhapur state. In 1902, he introduced 50% reservation in the administrative posts under his government for candidates belonging to the backward castes. 31.3. Vaikam Satyagraha. Until 1917, the INC refused to take up social reform issues for fear of disrupting the political unity of the Indian people. However, in 1917, it reversed this stance by passing a resolution condemning untouchability. With Gandhi's arrival, the Congress started giving importance to social reforms. Gandhi prioritized eradicating untouchability, declaring it as vital as political freedom. In 1923, Congress decided to take active steps towards eradicating untouchability. Immediately after the Kakinada session, the Kerala Provincial Congress Committee, KPCC, took up the issue to remove untouchability. The KPCC started a massive public messaging campaign against untouchability and a movement to open Hindu temples and all public roads to depressed classes or Ravanas. Shiva Temple at Vaikam, Travancore State, was chosen as the location for the very first satyagraha. The Avanas, untouchables, like Ejvas and Pulyas, were prohibited from using roads around the temple. The KPCC decided to initially focus on opening the 4 roads around the temple to everyone, regardless of caste, rather than the temple itself. Early on 30th March 1924, Savarans, caste Hindus, and Avanas led a procession and attempted to use the roads. The temple authorities and the Travancore government put barricades on the roads leading to the temple, and the district magistrate issued prohibitory orders to the leaders of the satyagraha. In August 1924, upon the death of the Maharaja, the Maharani, Queen Sethulakshmi Bai, as regent, released all prisoners. However, the Maharani refused to allow all castes access to temples, and the satyagraha continued. In March 1925, Gandhi began his tour of Kerala and met the Maharani and other officials. Eventually, he reached a compromise. 3 of the 4 roads surrounding the temples were open to everyone, while the 4th, eastern, road was reserved for Brahmins. Gandhi did not visit any temples in his Kerala tour, as Avarnas were excluded. 31.4 Socio-religious reform among Sikhs. Baba Guru Nanak was born in Talwandi, Nankana Sahib in Pakistan, in 1469. He founded Sikhism in the late 15th century. Guru Nanak didn't mean to start a new religion. However, his followers later created their own practices. Guru Nanak believed in the unity of the Godhead and the brotherhood of mankind. He condemned meaningless rites and rituals and preached belief in one God. Guru Nanak preached against the various evils rampant in society and advocated the establishment of a just social order. However, the people did not properly follow these simple and practical teachings of Guru Nanak and successive Sikh gurus. In due course, the Sikh religion developed its own rituals and institutions. From the 19th century, a number of social and religious reform movements emerged in the Sikh community to address social evils. Nirankari movement. Baba Dayal Das, a saintly man and a contemporary of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, was the first social reformer among the Sikhs to condemn the social evils that had gradually crept into Sikh society. Baba Dayal preached against idol worship of human gurus and expected his followers to believe in one formless God, Nirankari. Baba Dayal introduced a simplified version of marriage called Anand Karaj. In this system, the marriage is conducted in the presence of the Guru Granth, with the priest singing 4 relevant hymns from this holy book of the Sikhs. No other rituals are performed, and practices such as dowry, marriage processions, drinking, and dancing are disapproved. Namdhari movement, Kuka movement, started by Bhagat Jawahar Mal and Baba Balak Singh, the movement became a powerful instrument of socio-religious awakening among the Sikhs under Baba Ram Singh. Baba Ram Singh emphasized the worship of one God through prayer and meditation. He advised his followers to be engaged at all times in the worship of God. Baba Ram Singh preached against social evils such as the caste system, female infanticide, early marriage, and the exchange of daughters in marriage. He also promoted simple and affordable Anand marriages. Baba Ram Singh asked his followers to boycott everything bearing the stamp of the British government. The Kuka movement evoked feelings of self-respect and sacrifice for the country. The followers of the Kuka movement called for a boycott of educational institutions of British and laws established by them. They were rigid in their clothing and wore only handspun white attire. Singh Sabha movement. The Singh Sabha movement, founded at Amritsar in 1873, aimed to reform the Sikh society. The Singh Sabha leaders believed that social evils among the Sikhs were due to their lack of education. Hence, they decided to spread education and established a network of Khalsa schools, colleges, and other centers of learning. The Sabha was also started partly as a reaction to the proselytizing activities of Christians, Hindu reform movements, Brahmo Samajas, Arya Samaj, and Muslims, Aligarh movement and Ahmadiyya. The movement aimed to propagate the true Sikh religion and restore Sikhism to its pristine glory, to write and distribute historical and religious books of Sikhs, to propagate Gurmukhi and Punjabi literature, to counter the proselytizing activities of Christians, Hindu reform movements and Muslims. Akali movement, Gurudwara reform movement. The Akali movement, Gurudwara reform movement, was started by the Sikh reformers to purify their religious places by removing the corrupt mahants, priests, who were backed by the colonial government from Gurudwara, Sikh shrines. The Gurudwaras, Sikh shrines, were established by the Sikh gurus as centers of religious activity, social and moral instruction, and providing food and shelter to the poor and needy. All persons, irrespective of their caste, color, or sex, could enter these places and share the free meal served in the langar, community kitchen, attached to each Gurudwara. After the death of the 10th Sikh Guru, Guru Gobind Singh, control of the Sikh Gurudwaras passed on to the Udasi Mahants. Utsis were widely respected as men of high moral character and integrity. Most of them were not attached to any particular shrine or its wealth and property but moved from place to place. They did not look upon the offerings as their personal income but used them to run free community kitchens and other social welfare works. In time, corruption spread among these Mahants, and they began to convert the offerings and property of the Gurudwara into their personal possessions. Gradually, they started living a luxurious life and indulging in various social evils. The followers of Sikhism tried to check the evil practices of these Mahants through social protest and organized a movement for the liberation of Sikh shrines from the control of the hereditary Mahants. This movement is popularly known as the Akali movement because of the Akali Jathas, bands of volunteers, leading this reform movement. Akali control over Golden Temple and Akali Takhta. Apart from the Mahants, after the British annexation of Punjab in 1849, the government appointed a committee of 10 members headed by Sarbara to look after the day-to-day affairs of Gurudwaras. The corrupt practices in Gurudwara premises, the evil practices of Mahants, and official control over Gurudwara led to discontent among the Sikhs, who decided to remove Mahants and take control of Gurudwaras. The Sikh reformers organized Jathas, groups of volunteers, and compelled the Mahants and government to hand over the control of Gurudwaras to local devotees. After easily gaining control over Gurudwaras, the Sikh reformers demanded control over the management of the Golden Temple and Akal Takhta. To avoid conflict, the government decided to grant them control. The Akalis elected Shiromani Gurudwara Prabandhak Committee, SGPC, to control and manage the Golden Temple, Akal Takht, and other Gurudwaras. Nankana tragedy. After taking control of the Golden Temple and the Akal Takht at Amritsar, the reformers paid attention to other Sikh Gurudwaras. In Nankana, the birthplace of Guru Nanak Dev, Gurudwara Janam Asthan and other shrines were controlled by hereditary Mahants. Narayan Das, the Mahant of the Gurudwara at Nankana, practiced several social and religious evils. He kept a mistress, invited dancing girls into the Gurudwara, and permitted profane singing on the holy premises. He was also not willing to surrender his control to the Akalis. On 20th February 1921, when a jatha of 130 reformers, including some women, entered Gurudwara to pray, the Mahat and the mercenaries hired by him attacked these armless, peaceful reformers. The barbaric killing of the jatha by the Mahant sent waves of shock and resentment throughout the country. Mahatma Gandhi and other national leaders condemned the Mahant's brutal action. On 3rd March, Mahatma Gandhi visited Nankana to express sympathy with the Akali reformers. In his speech, Gandhi condemned the Mahant's action and advised the Akali reformers to refuse to cooperate with the government in the official commission of inquiry. It was on the advice of Mahatma Gandhi and other national leaders that the Akali reformers decided to broaden their movement to eliminate government interference in their religious places completely. This changed policy led to the Akali agitations over the issues of the keys of the Toshakhana, treasury, and later their peaceful struggle at Guru Ka Bagh. Toshakhana keys affair. The SGPC committee controlling the Golden Temple asked the government-appointed manager of the Golden Temple to hand over the Toshakhana, treasury, keys to the committee. However, before the manager came to do so, the British Deputy Commissioner took the keys away. This government action created great resentment in the Sikh community. The Akali reformers launched a powerful agitation, popularly known as the Keys Affair, to get the keys. The Sikh reformers were also joined by Congress volunteers in Punjab in this agitation. Since Mahatma Gandhi's non-cooperation movement was already underway, the Punjab government decided not to confront Sikhs. It released all the Akali volunteers arrested in connection with the agitation over the Keys Affair and returned the Golden Temple treasury keys to the committee president, Baba Kharak Singh. Guru Ka Bagh Morcha. The unconditional release of the Akali prisoners arrested in connection with the Keys Affair and the return of the keys to the committee undermined the Punjab government's prestige. Hence, after the suspension of the non-cooperation movement in February 1922 and the arrest of Mahatma Gandhi and other Congress leaders, the Punjab government decided to teach a lesson to the Akali reformers. The government arrested Akali volunteers who were cutting wood from trees attached to the Gurudwara Guru Ka Bagh for use in the community kitchen. The police argued that the dry wood was the private property of the Mahant of the Gurudwara, who were removed, and that Akali reformers were committing a theft by using it in the community kitchen. To assert their right to cut dry trees for use in the community kitchen, the Jathas of the Akalis started marching to Guru Ka Bagh, and the police started arresting these reformers. Once the jails were full, instead of arresting the Akali volunteers, police began to beat them mercilessly till they became unconscious. In this peaceful suffering at Guru Ka Bagh, the Akali reformers won wide sympathy and support from the press and national leaders. As a result, the Governor of Punjab ordered the police to stop beating the Akali Jathas at Guru Ka Bagh. All those arrested in connection with the Guru Ka Bagh agitation were released unconditionally, and the volunteers were allowed to carry the wood from the garden for use in the community kitchen at Guru Ka Bagh. Akali agitation in Nabha Akali reformers' victories in the Keys affair and the Guru Ka Bagh greatly raised the morale of the Akali leadership. In 1923, they demanded the restoration of the Maharaja of Nabha, who had been forcibly removed by the British government. This issue was not related to social and religious reforms, and Akalis did not achieve much success on it. End of Akali movement. The Punjab government passed the Sikh Gurudwaras Act, 1925, which gave the Sikh community a legal right to elect functionaries to manage their Gurudwaras. This act ended the hereditary control of the Mahants and introduced democratic control in the Gurudwara management. 31.5. Women's organizations. Women's organizations in the second half of the 19th century. The social reform movement of the 19th century provided opportunities for women to obtain education. As a result, a sizable number of English-educated middle-class women were produced by the late 19th century. These women took the initiative to fight for their rights and organized many associations. 1. Swarna Kumari Devi, sister of Rabindranath Tagore, organized the Sakhi Samiti, Ladies Association, in 1886 to promote the free exchange of thought and help underprivileged women. The association later became a craft center for widows. 2. Pandita Ramabai Saraswati founded the Arya Mahila Samaj in 1882 with the aim of empowering and educating women to lead dignified lives. 3. Ramabai Ranade established the Hindu Ladies Social Club and Literary Club in 1893 to train women in languages, handwork, public speaking, and other basic skills. Women's organizations at the beginning of the 20th century. The partition of Bengal in 1905 resulted in the launching of the Swadeshi movement. The women of Bengal and Punjab actively participated in the Swadeshi movement. They contributed their bangles, nose rings, and bracelets to the National Fund. This Swadeshi period marked the formation of several women's organizations. 1. Ramabai Ranade started the first Bharat Mahila Parishad in 1904. 2. In 1904, Sarla Devi Chaudhrani, niece of Rabindranath Tagore, opened a shop called Lakshmi Bhandar in Calcutta that sold only Swadeshi products. 3. Mahila Shilpa Samiti, 1906 to 1908, was established by Hironmai Devi, niece of Rabindranath Tagore. 4. Rameshwari Nehru, wife of Jawaharlal Nehru's cousin, organized Prayag Mahila Samit in Allahabad in 1909 and edited the women's magazine Stree Darpan in Hindi. 5. Bharat Stree Mahamandal was established by Sarla Devi in Lahore in 1910. Later, the branches of this organization were established in many cities. It is considered the first All India Women's Association set up by women. Bharat Stree Mahamandal. Bharat Stree Mahamandal was started to bring together women of all castes and creeds based on their economic interests for the moral and material progress of Indian women. The inaugural session of the Bharat Stree Mahamandal was held in Allahabad in December 1910. It was presided over by the Begum Sahiba of Janjira, a Muslim woman. It was also attended by the Nawab Begum of Bhopal, the only ruling prince of India, and a Muslim woman. Ramabai Ranade chaired the first session of the India Women's Conference held in Bombay in 1904. She was the first woman to write an autobiography in Marathi, Amacha Ayushatil Kahi Athavni. Women's organizations after 1910. The following women's organizations were formed after 1910. 1. Women's Indian Association, 1917. 2. Federation of University Women in India, 1920. It got affiliated to the International Federation of University Women in 1921. 3. The National Council of Women in India, 1925. 4. All India Women's Conference, 1927. Women's Indian Association, 1917. Annie Besant, Margaret Cousins, Dorothy Janarajdasa, and others formed the Women's Indian Association, WIA, at Adyar, Madras, in 1917. It was mainly concerned with influencing government policy on women's suffrage and educational and social reform issues. Its main objectives were the spread of women's education, elimination of child marriage and other social evils, franchise for women, and establishment of equality of rights between men and women. This association played an important role in articulating the women's movement until its merger with the All India Women's Conference. All India Women's Conference, AIWC, 1927. In 1927, Margaret Cousins invited all the women's associations in the country to a conference. The women's associations of Madras, Mumbai, Pune, and other cities gathered in Pune city at Fergusson College. The conference was held under the presidency of Maharani Chimanabai Gaikwad of Baroda, and it led to the formation of the All India Women's Conference, AIWC. AIWC's main aim was to improve educational efforts for women and children to tackle other women's rights issues. Maharani Chimnabai Gaikwad, Sarojini Naidu, Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay, Rajkumari Amrit Kaur and Lady Dorab Tata were some important founding members of AIWC. AIWC played an important role in bringing about various legislative reforms including Sarda Act, Hindu Code Bill, Devdasi Act, Universal Adult Franchise, Factory and Mines Act and Maternity Benefits Act. End of chapter 1932. Tribal and Peasant Movements 2. 32.1. TR1BILS and National Movement.